Hey, welcome to an introduction to Sculptris. This is going to be a quick tour. You may have to pause and rewind it and review it a few times. We're going to jump straight into it. So some of the things that we're going to learn here are about the controls, the user interface, the number of triangles that Sculptris uses, how do we order our operations, how do we add objects, and just some other things that make Sculptris work. So first of all, the controls. The rotate control. So if I just quickly add something here on my object, it'll help me teach it. The rotate control is clicking your middle mouse. So if you click your middle mouse, you're able to rotate. So be aware that in 3D space, you want to rotate often. Secondly, to zoom, you just scroll your middle mouse. It allows you to zoom. And finally, panning, which is a little bit different. You have to hold down Shift on your keyboard and click your middle mouse. Panning really allows you that if you happen to need to get into an area, you can actually pan to that area so you can focus in on that area when you need more detail. So those are the controls. Next, the user interface. So the user interface of Sculptris, a few things you want to be aware of are the strength. First of all, the tools which are off to the left here, which we'll discuss in just a little bit. But first of all, the strength slider. So this slider right here is the strength of your tool. And we recommend that you have a strength of a half or lower, unless you can't do more, unless you can't do what you need to. But generally you want to have your strength be at half or lower. And also the detail, same thing, you want it at about half or lower. We'll discuss detail a little bit more in the future. So as far as your tools go, the most common tools are inflate. Inflate, literally when you click, so I'm going to move my strength down again, but when you click, it's going to inflate where you're clicking. So you can kind of see here, I'm working pretty quickly, but that's inflating an area, okay? And you can click or you can kind of scroll over. So that's the inflate tool. Another super common tool is the grab tool. The grab tool literally lets you grab an area, and depending on the size of your tool, it'll grab it in different amounts. So another thing I'll mention just before we get into more tools is the size of the tool. So you're seeing that little circle around my tool. To change that, you press the letter, or the two keys beside the letter P on your keyboard. So the two to the right of P is larger, and right beside the letter P makes it smaller. So that's as far as how to change the size of your tools, okay? Other common tools are the smooth tool. So the smooth tool just smooths things out. Okay, so if you want the bumps to come out, you can smooth them out if you want to. Other things are draw. So draw does the following. It generally kind of just builds it up a little bit. Okay, and also we sometimes use flatten. And flatten will do kind of what you anticipate, depending on the size of it, but it will flatten an area. So you can see that shadow there is kind of being flattened. Okay, so those are the most common tools. Next, I want to talk about the triangles. So if you press the letter W, and you may, if you're in my class, you may have on one of your assignments a document that says for Sculptris shortcuts and general help. Click here. The document looks like this and has lots of keyboard shortcuts. And one of them is the letter W. So W turns the wireframe on and off. So if you press W, you're going to see the triangles that exist on your object. So Sculptris works and creates triangles as you work. And you'll notice here I have 17,770 triangles. And if I do more work, I will create more triangles. Okay, so I'm now at 18,644. Now about the triangles, first of all, you want to keep the number of triangles at 200,000 or below, just because you might not be able to paint your object if you've got way more than that. It'll just take too long to paint. Probably your computer won't crash, but you won't be able to paint it very easily. So that's one hint. The other thing I want to mention is regarding the detail here, if you have the detail all the way up, what it's going to do is make too many triangles too quickly. So I was just previously at about 17,000. I'm all of a sudden at 29,000. So that's why we say have your detail at half or below, okay? Now, a few other things. Regarding the order of operations, you want to do symmetrical features first. Okay, so if you're working on, for example, this little puppy dog here, the symmetrical features are kind of the shape of his head, his eyes are symmetrical, his nose is symmetrical, his mouth is symmetrical, his ears aren't. So if you were to kind of start it, and again, I'm not going to do a great job because I want to go through this pretty quickly, but if I was to start this, again, inflate is my favorite tool. It's one of my go-tos, inflate and smooth, but grab is also a really, really good one. So inflate, grab, and smooth, but you'll notice that I'm kind of symmetrically building up the jaw of my dog here. I'm just using the inflate tool. So I can do all the symmetrical things. You'll also notice that what I want to do right now is show you how to add objects. So if you want to add objects, you can, right up here, click on New Sphere, and there's an option for Add Object, and you can add objects, okay? So that's something that you want to know as well. While we're doing that, I might as well talk about what global means. So you'll notice with some of your tools, particularly scale and grab, there's a option here called global. If global is activated, so if it's pink, it will grab the entire globe of the object. So it's grabbing the entire object here. If it's not pink, so if you deactivate it, it will then become the generic grab tool, which will grab a piece of the object and not the entire globe of the object. So what I'm really quickly going to do, I'll just scale these down just to give you an idea, and then I could use grab here, and I could move these into his head if I wanted to. Okay, and if I wanted to, then I could deactivate global, and I could kind of pull his eyes up or down to kind of look like these oval shaped, and that's something that I could do to kind of get into those oval shaped kind of looking eyes there. So there's some important things for you. So symmetrical features first, asymmetrical features second. So if you turn off symmetry, you can then start working on the asymmetrical features, like one of his ears coming out and one of his ears going up, whatever it happens to be. And finally, painting is the third part of your order of operations. A couple more things just before we are done here. Make sure you save frequently. You want to save about every 10 minutes or so. So I might call this dog 1, and in 10 minutes I'll save and call it dog 2. In digital sculpting, you want to save frequently. Also want to really quickly also talk about doing the opposite of a tool. So if I'm on the inflate tool, you'll notice here on this document that the opposite is holding Alt on your keyboard. Okay, so if I hold down Alt on my keyboard and I'm using the inflate tool, I think probably you know that the opposite of inflate is deflate. So if I hold down Alt, it will then start, instead of inflating, it's deflating my copy dog's mouth here. So that's the ability to do the opposite of a function. And lastly, to fix some mistakes, if you ever get the following, and this is pretty typical as well that students do, I'll just quickly show you here. If you ever get the following issue where you have this negative space, we call it. So when your triangles aren't smooth into one another, you notice like here, this looks very strange. That's not normal. To fix that, what you generally want to use is your smooth tool. So your smooth tool, and probably with a relatively high strength, your smooth tool basically reverses any of the damage that can be done through non-smooth triangles. And you can also use what's called the reduce brush. You'll see there's a huge density of triangles here. So to smooth things out again, you can use the smooth tool, and then there's a reduce brush here, which allows you to kind of make those triangles larger so that when you get back to the smooth tool, you can actually smooth it out in a good way. So I'll just kind of work this guy out here. But there's some hints for you. Hopefully that helped you out a little bit with the Sculptris interface. It went really quick, but it gave you an idea of triangles, all the tools that we use, the strength and the interface, and how to reverse some of the issues that you might have.